the format tonight? Is it like last night? We meditate for a while and then go upstairs afterwards? Do we do that with this group too? Is that what we do here?
Well, you're the boss.
Oh.
Well, sorry to say, but
yeah. Well, I didn't really know, so I thought about it like, because last night what we did is we meditated for a little while, and then I talked for a little while, and then we went upstairs and we talked some more for a while. Kind of, yeah. So we don't do that. But what was I going to say? He said something. Oh, about practicality. Lama Yeshe was always saying that we need to be practical, And I got interested in Buddhism not because I was looking for a religion. I got interested in Buddhism because I was looking for a way to solve the world's problems. And also, from a holistic perspective, from the micro and the macro, I was looking at the person and how personal limitations limit the way the whole world works. Because I'll just say a little bit, then we'll get into it. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area in California during the 60s when there was basically a revolution going on in my town. And, we were against the war, and then later we were very much trying to stop global warming way back in 1969. We knew about it because Berkeley's a very scientific community. It's where the university is, and there's a lot of really advanced thinkers there, and it was quite an honor and a privilege actually to grow up there. And I didn't really realize it till later, and also because most of my friends were sons and daughters of professors, so it was quite a different kind of cohort to grow up in. It wasn't the typical American teenager trip. We didn't do that at all. We protested the war and went backpacking in the mountains and things like that. So we were very serious about this idea of changing the world. And I don't know I'm saying this, but I hadn't. And then we all went off and did our own things. And then about 10 years ago, we had a reunion. We were all in our 50s, and it was really interesting to see everybody had gone on to do something to help the environment or make the world a better place, with the exception of one or two, and they were all exceptional people, and I was just really happy to see that. There were writers and professors and scientists and social workers and a few moms. That's great. Being mom's really good too. Psychiatrists, psychologists, But anyway, so that's more my approach, And so they were asking me last night about ordination. Well, I tried that too, But I kind of trained as a biologist, a scientist, studied ecosystems, and so for me, Buddhism just seemed like the science of how the mind works. It wasn't. This is just how it works, And there wasn't a lot of hocus pocus about it. And I think that through the works of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who's been so keen on bringing science and Buddhism together his whole life, that we're actually seeing that that's true, And of course, back then, we had books, like there was this book called The Tao of Physics and stuff like that, where we were already seeing how Eastern religions and physics come together, And so when I met the Tibetan Lamas and they started talking about how you die and get reincarnated, they talked about that with just as much scientific certainty as when I studied the Krebs cycle in biology. It's like you die and then, you all these visions and you dissolve into this subtle mind and then you move on to the next body and then you create this new mind and then you do this and, and I just thought, wow, if science could find out about this, it would just revolutionize the whole world. So that's kind of why I got interested. It is why I got interested, because I figured out when I was a teenager that the world problems were not political. They were political, but the political was personal, and that it was because we were overwhelmed with greed and pride and jealousy And that was what was at the root of all the problems. And so, and even with the politician, that's the problem with politics, you know. I mean, politics is all dirty because it's the same thing. Even people who seem to have good motivation get all mixed up with the people that don't, and it's very difficult to make political systems work. And now we really see that. And when it's come to the crunch where we need to completely change how we run the world, and I don't know if we're going to be able to, you know. We'll see what happens with this. You know, we keep having these climate summits. There's one coming up in Madrid. It just starts next week, but if anything comes of it, who knows? You know, now we have the children out. It's like the children's crusade. The children are out there now pleading to do something, you know. So I thought Buddhism was the answer, which is kind of funny because now, you know, almost 50 years later, it's like, well, here we are, 15 people in Zurich, you know. So I shifted my focus to thinking that we're all going to become Buddhists, to thinking, well, at least if we can preserve Buddhism when the Dark Ages come again, at least we'll keep it alive, you know. And I hope the Dark Ages don't come, but it's happened before. You know, after the Roman Empire fell, it was pretty dark in this part of the world for a long time, and it was the monks in the monasteries that kept education alive, and it could well happen again, you know, because we're moving at a steady pace of great ignorance. I mean, it's, you know, the science has been there for 50 years, you know. So I don't know. So anyway, I don't want to be pessimistic. And we're supposed to be talking about emotional balance or something. Is that what it is?
Yes, emotional balance.
That's why I'm here.
Well, you know, I think Dharma's really good for that. And maybe some of you have seen, everybody gets English, right? We don't, yeah. So that's really helpful. I've never, you know. I think probably you've all seen Lama Yeshe's book, Becoming Your Own Therapist. Have you seen that book? If not, you can look for it. It's free, you know.
Yeah, it's upstairs for
Yeah.
free. I got one. Yes.
And I found that Dharma can be very helpful for healing emotions, but on the other hand, it doesn't have to be. If we take Dharma, and I don't mean to be putting it down this way, but just as a religion, and not something that's about self-investigation, which would be more scientific. But if we just take it as, you know, these are these rituals we're going to follow, and I'm going to say these prayers, and be devoted to these gurus and hope change happens, it's not going to happen. I mean, I can't say that. It might happen, you know, and definitely it will happen eventually. But I think if you want to speed up the process and get to know yourself better, then we have to use a little more proactive self-searching and self-awareness when we do meditation practice. And I think most people come to the Dharma, except maybe Italians. No, I'm just joking. Come to the Dharma because that's why, you know, they want to make their lives better. They want to see something better. And maybe they found that meditation helps them, you know. So, so I thought that tonight we would just do some meditations, if that's okay with you. And then tomorrow night, if you like, we can do some exercises that help to open the mind and body. And they picked this topic. I didn't. It wasn't my idea. I guess she picked it, you know. I don't know who picked it, but I think it's really important to work with the body if you're trying to change the mind. And we were just talking in the car. I was interested in Buddhism as a young person, but I was also interested in dance as a young person. And I studied them simultaneously for about a decade, and then I met Lama Yeshe, and I just quit dancing because once I discovered Tantra, I didn't need to dance anymore because I realized that that's what I was looking for. Because Tantra, the reason, are you familiar? I mean, how much teaching have you guys had? Do you know about Sutra and Tantra in Buddhism? Is that something you've heard of before?
It's new for some.
Yeah.
Not everybody has had.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I'll have to do a bit of talking. Maybe that. I mean, because I was checking today about what we should do, and didn't come out movement today. So I thought, well, I wonder why that is. But anyway, so maybe we have to talk a little bit more tonight and do some meditation. We'll do some exercises, but so in Buddhism, there's kind of two divisions of Buddhist practice, and one is called Sutra, and one is called Tantra, and I won't get into too much technicality. We can just look at the Mahayana Buddhism, which is the Buddhism that was in Japan and China and Tibet and India, because there's a different kind of Buddhism called Hinayana Buddhism that they say there isn't much Tantra in that Buddhism, and that's the Buddhism from Thailand and Sri Lanka and what's left, I guess, of the and Mahayana Buddhism is also in Vietnam. That's like Thich Nhat Hanh's lineage, if you know Thich Nhat Hanh. So within Mahayana Buddhism, there's Sutra and Tantra, and what that means is that Sutra is just based on intellectual learning and just simple meditations that work with the mind and body, whereas Tantra works with the energy of the body, and it's much more complicated, and it involves a lot of visualizations and mantras and colors and light, and it uses a subtle body that's kind of similar to like acupuncture. There's like this energy that flows through the body, and it's supposedly a much quicker way. And how I understand it, because I always have to take everything from Tibetan Buddhism and sort of put it into a context that makes sense to me, and without changing that really, but just trying to understand it. And so, as someone who'd been interested in dance and yoga and qigong and energy work and healing work, Tantra made a lot of sense to me, because what I learned and what I was looking for from a very early age, I should say that's kind of proud sounding, but when I was about 18 or 19, I got involved with Isadora Duncan. You ever hear Isadora Duncan? Yes. She was a dancer. She kind of started modern dance, and she was very popular in Europe, actually, even though she was from San Francisco in the early 20th century. And her whole thing was, if you free the body, you free the mind. And it used to intrigue me because when I read her, I think it's her autobiography. I can't remember. It's been so many years now. Yeah, I think it is her autobiography. She talks about how she would spend hours just sitting and meditating on her heart, and that her dance technique came out of that. And it just so happened that my dance teacher was also a Zen Buddhist. So I kind of got dance and Buddhism together and saw how that worked. And I don't think there's a lot of Tantra and Zen, So, in fact, it hadn't even come to the United States yet. The Tibetans hadn't really arrived, So it made a lot of sense to me. I was trying to apply Buddhist philosophy, but working how that would, how I could apply that to body work, because there's a lot of psychology at the time about how the emotions are all locked in your body. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with those concepts. Yeah, everybody is. Sounds like it, And I think that's one of the reasons we all, yoga in the last 20 years has just become taken off everywhere, because when you work with that energy, you just feel how relaxed and open you are, and your mind's peaceful, and And so Tantra is just another form of yoga. It all comes from India, you know, and in Hinduism they have lots. I mean, Hatha yoga is just the first stage, you know, of Tibetan Tantra, and Tibetan Tantra isn't really different from Hindu practice, you know, and the philosophy is different, but a lot of the deities are the same, and a lot of the practice is the same. I think, and even when you read Patanjali's sutras, it's hard to tell the difference, you know. But the Buddhists are very clear there's a big difference. So, you know. So for a long time, I didn't get too interested in Hinduism because my teacher said, "Oh, you know, don't do that," you know. I mean, I always did Hatha yoga, but it's interesting because when you study the tantric meditations, they all say you start sitting in the Vajra posture. You know, that's, you know, what we call the lotus posture. So how could you have not done years of Hatha yoga to be able to sit like that? You know. So having been someone that was coming from this more physical bodywork yoga perspective, I was a total freak in the FPMT. You know, they were like, you know, I used to say, I remember when I first started getting involved, I said, we should come and do some body work here, because I would watch everybody sitting meditating like this. And I would think, now how are they going to be opening their channels and relaxing their minds if they're sitting like this? You know? And they were like, oh, we don't do that. We're a Galupa center, you know, we don't do that. Of course, this is a long time ago, you know, before yoga really took off or anything. And so I said, okay. But Lama Yeshe encouraged me, and so I don't know. I'm telling all this other than to say that this is why I think it's important to work with your body and work with your energy. Is that it really helps. And Tantra, if you're going to do tantric practice, which I don't know how many of you have been introduced to that, it's really helpful to do things like what we're going to do tomorrow night, because most of us and every human being, you know, because we haven't done a lot of energy work, unless you've done yoga, our minds are pretty stuck. And what Tantra teaches, the whole basic foundation of it, is that the mind rides on the winds. And the winds are the energies that flow through the channels of the body. And so most of the tantric practices are about visualizing the channels inside the body and working with the mantras to open it up. And what that does is then that brings your mind much quicker into a state of clarity and bliss and warm-heartedness and spaciousness, wherein we can meditate on emptiness and develop bodhicitta. So it creates the foundation for all of that, and it creates it in a quicker way than if you're just sitting looking at your mind when all your energy is not moving anywhere. You know, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So if you do yoga, I encourage you to continue with it. You know, and I like to teach qigong because it has the same results. It's from China instead of India. It's much easier, you know. You don't have to try to look skinny, and you don't have to stretch yourself, and it's not hard, you know. I mean, yoga can be pretty tough, you know. You have to, like, it hurts, you know. You have to, like, pull on your legs and, you know, get in these weird postures. And anyway, I'm being a bit facetious, you know, a bit silly, sarcastic. I said that last night. I think American humor is sometimes sarcastic, and I'm noticing the Europeans don't get it. Especially the English people. They think I really mean it, you know. So I have to be careful, you know. The other day, this friend of mine who has been transcribing some talks I gave on the 7-point mind training, and in the middle of the talks I said something like, because her name's Beth, and she's younger, so she's made me start using WhatsApp, you know, and, you know, because that's how she communicates with me, and she buzzes me a lot, you know, and I'm like, so, but I'm grateful because she's brought me into the 21st century. Now I can look at it, you know, I just learned how to use a phone and all this stuff. But I said something, I said, Beth's ruined my life, you know, she makes me look at WhatsApp all the time. And she's transcribing the teachings, and she didn't know I was joking, you know. So I have to be careful about that, you know, when I say things. So if I say something that sounds a bit negative, it's just, I'm just being supposed to be funny, you know. Anyway, where were we about Tantra? So, and you know, Tantra goes so specific as to say, you know, what emotions are blocked where and how we release them. And the thing that I have learned about trying to do this for years, though, is that what also happens for Westerners is that when they just walk off the street and, you know, meet Lama Zopa, and he completely blows their mind with how amazing he is, and they get a tantric practice from him, and then they sit down to practice it, it doesn't work very well because they're very advanced practices. And maybe Tibetans have different nervous systems than we do, but ours are so uptight because we grew up in schools, we spend all our day in desks. We haven't loosened up these energy winds very much. And so when people sit down and try to do Tantra, they end up being uncomfortable. And so reason I've kind of come out into the world is to try to help people navigate those waters so that when they get into tantric practice, they can be blissful like I was. You know, when I first met Lama Yeshe, I just completely got blissed out. My mind went into Mahamudra. I'm like, wow, this is the most amazing thing ever. And I'm not saying that to be proud, but I'm saying it because I had years of preparing for that without even knowing that that's what that was about. And I've never really come out and said this, but I'm just, this group lets me be really honest. Last night I was really honest too. So I feel like it's really important, especially if you're serious about Dharma, to kind of get a taste of that. So tomorrow we're going to do some Qigong meditations, and he's got a little recording thing going on here, so you can watch it another time. And because I really encourage you, if you are interested in Dharma, that the Tantric path is an amazing, amazing practice. It opens up your life to a completely different world, and it transforms everything, you know. And it's a very fast path to enlightenment because it teaches you how to transform every single part of your day if you can develop awareness, you know. And so the Sutrayana path, the idea is that the path to enlightenment is avoiding avoiding emotions, you know, like desire and anger, and, you know, avoiding them, or when they arise, you apply an antidote to it. You know, when desire arises, you're not supposed to have any desire. And when desire arises, you're supposed to, if it's for the opposite sex, you're supposed to think of them without their skin, and they're just blood and guts. And I'm serious. And gory, and, you know, so that you don't have desire for that, you know. And if you have desire for like an ice cream cone, you have to think about, oh, that's just going to make me really fat. I can't eat that. And, you know, it's like you're supposed to just stop these things, which isn't that easy to do, which is why we talked about ordination last night. Why in the Sutrayana path you have to go live in a monastery, because then you're away from all those things. But a tantric practitioner doesn't necessarily have to do that. And I don't want to go away from our Gelugpa, what's the word, party line. Our Gelugpa, how do you say that? Our Gelugpa tradition, you know, because Lama Tsongkhapa, I mean, I really, really treasure Lama Tsongkhapa, and all the teachings that we study in Gelugpa pretty much come through Lama Tsongkhapa, who was a great, great yogi and scholar from the 15th century. And what we study all came after that. And so, and what he said is that the best way to be in the world, to practice, is to be on the outside a renounced being, you know, an ordained person. I should have said that last night. And on the inside, we practice Mahayana, which is great bodhicitta and loving kindness and wishing all beings be free from suffering. And secretly, we practice Tantra. So, and the reason is that unless you've really got a lot of meditation practice, it's pretty difficult to walk the tantric path. It's pretty difficult to think you can still participate in desire and hatred and transform it. Because I didn't get to that part. I jumped ahead of myself. In Tantra, we don't reject delusion. You let it, this is the idea anyway, you let it arise, and then you use that energy because you understand its emptiness. You use that energy to develop your wisdom. But that's not such an easy thing to do, which is why we practice Sutra and Tantra. Why we have to know the Lam Rim backwards and forwards. That's why Lam Rim is the foundation of Tantra. We have to know the Lam Rim because we have to know how, do you know what I mean by the Lam Rim? The graduated path to enlightenment, the studies that you're learning here, discovering Buddhism, everything that's in discovering Buddhism. We have to learn all of that because we can't always transform things. So we have to be able to know what the antidotes are and work with that first. And use that to develop a deeper meditation practice, because it takes a certain amount of meditation practice before you can be able to realize the clarity of your mind and realize awareness and use your awareness and clarity and emptiness and bodhicitta to transform emotions when they arise, right? However, I believe that emotions are coming up all the time anyway. And so it's really helpful to have ways of dealing with them rather than just trying to make them go away, you know? And also I think that just to be healthy, it's really, the reason I encourage people to do Qigong or some kind of practice every day. It's not just running, you know, but a practice that actually works with the inner energy of your body. Because if you ever study Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine or any of the Eastern medicines that work with energy, I'll just take Chinese medicine for example. Every organ is related to an emotion. And so if we are, what's the word for keeping down? Suppressing. If we're suppressing an emotion, then we're going to get sick. And we see, you know, today how many illnesses are related to emotions, especially what's killing the Western world, you know, heart attacks, high blood pressure, diabetes. So many of these things, you know, are stress related, but they're also because we're not liberating our emotions. So one of them, I think I'm going to stop talking because I'm just going to do a meditation with you that I like to do before I sit down to meditate sometimes, because I learned it from Chinese medicine, but it really helps me to calm my mind down. And it just uses color and emotions and organs. So maybe that's where we'll start tonight. Did I say enough about Tantra? Stuff like that? So I guess what I'm trying to say is that when I lead a tantric retreat to try to help people, I do a lot of these exercises and things like that, so that people get an experience rather than just get kind of uptight, you know, or a headache or something. And I'm being not unfair. I mean, a lot of people have good experiences doing Tantra, but it depends on your past karma. But, you know, the way the Tibetans do them, like what we just did in France, you know, it's not easy. And I led Qigong. There was a retreat in France for a month with Lama Zopa last May. And the people that came to the Qigong classes, you know, they were so grateful because it just helped them so much in their meditation. Because sitting, any time you're sitting for long periods of time, you need to move. And if you can move in a way that releases your organs and releases your energy, then it's easy, then that facilitates your life, you know. So I'll show you a little bit tomorrow. I don't think I need to say anything more other than our motivation for the evening. Obviously, we're here because we want to. It's usually twofold, you know, and bodhicitta motivation is twofold. We're here because we want to attain enlightenment. We want to, and what does that mean? We want to be free from our deluded minds, from our limited vision, from our small-mindedness, from our uncomfortable, the uncomfort of being, you know, just to going from the darkness of being to the lightness of being, or we often feel light a lot of the time, but it goes away. So, you know, we learn to meditate so that we can create an inner space where we feel light and peaceful and happy and loving and safe. And that is our refuge, and that is our bodhicitta, and that's what we learn, hopefully, in places like this, is how to create an inner environment so that no matter what's going on in our lives, if we go sit down on a little cushion and breathe and remember everything, you know, remember our objects of refuge and remember what we've cultivated, then we have a safe place to go to where we can heal ourselves. So it's about healing ourselves, isn't it? And then it's about, not just for us, because we're surrounded by people just like us, and people who are worse than us, and people who are better than us. But we're surrounded by people, and we can't ignore that. And we can't ignore what we see on the news. We can't ignore what's going on in the Middle East or what's going on in the poor parts of the world. You know, we can't ignore any of that. So the more we think about that, hopefully, the more we become inspired to want to help. And so we start out maybe thinking about ourselves, but then the greatest motivation is to be able to benefit beings in a great, great way, like you know, become a great being like Nelson Mandela or Mother Teresa or the Dalai Lama or St. Francis, or I like to say John Lennon or George Harrison, or people who really changed the world, you know. And for that we need to become at least a bodhisattva, if not a Buddha. And so that's our motivation for being here and helping each other and listen to me. For you. So you want to try this meditation?
Yeah,
Okay. And it's perfectly fine to sit on a chair. But if you do sit on a chair, I like to have your feet on a cushion so they're not just dangling, you know, so that your feet, and also so your feet stay warm. So, yeah. So I'm going to start with these taps we did last night. Does anybody have any questions about what I said? Did I talk too fast? Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, let's just sit for a minute or two. And the first thing we need to do is just pay attention to our bodies. I think some of you have been to Vipassana retreats. That's really great, where you can tune into the body. So you can just close your eyes. Pay attention to your breathing. And bring your mind inside your body instead of looking outside. Feel your body, your belly going up and down, in and out, I mean. Make sure your top button on your pants is loosed. And feel your feet on the cushion or on the floor. And be aware of your toes and your feet and your legs and your knees, your upper legs. Feel the sitting bones on the cushion. Breathing into the belly. And as you breathe, imagine that the inside of your body, mostly your torso, is like an empty balloon. And when you breathe in, you're going to blow it up. So it's like first you breathe into your belly, and then you keep breathing, and you breathe up into the middle part of your back, breathing into the back and under the ribs, and then exhaling. And then making the breath even longer, so you breathe into the belly, into the lower rib cage, and all the way into the upper rib cage. So it almost feels like the breath is lifting the ribs up off the hips. And you breathe under the armpits, under the collarbones, behind the shoulder blades. Just feel your body lightening up with the breath. Notice your throat and your face and the crown of your head. And when you take this nice, slow, long breath, imagine that at the top of the breath, as you exhale, that your whole body's hollow, and as you exhale, the air, the breath is going down your arms and down your legs and all the way up to the crown of your head and out the top of your head. Just imagine. You don't have to feel it yet. And as you breathe, you might find that your breath gets a little bit more expansive and your back becomes a little bit taller and your ribs become a little bit wider. And as you exhale, also comes the feeling of letting go. And as usual, when your mind wanders off, just bring it back to the breathing. And just feel a sense of spaciousness inside your body. If it helps to relax the thoughts, then you can imagine that as you breathe out, you emphasize that the energy or the breath is going down from the base of the spine into the earth. Not everyone has to do this, but sometimes it's helpful that as you breathe in, you imagine that it's almost like there's a vacuum cleaner in your belly. And as you breathe in, it's kind of sucking all that discursive energy, thinking energy, into the belly and then down into the earth, so that the body becomes more hollow and clear, and thinking the body is also made of light. So then when you have a sense of hollow body that's relaxed and breathing in and paying attention to the in-breath and letting go with the out-breath. And what's important here is to pay attention to this inner voice, the inner attitude that's looking, watching what you're doing. Because one of the most important things about meditation is to have that be a very kind, gentle voice. That we're sitting here making friends with ourselves, not judging ourselves or saying you're not doing it right or not doing it wrong. It doesn't matter how you do it. The most important thing is when you sit and meditate is to create a space of inner acceptance and care and love. It might feel funny at first, but it's really important. So you don't have to think about it much, but just pay attention to the way you bring your mind back to its object, which in this case is just a hollow body breathing. Okay, now we'll start the healing exercise. So the first thing we do is pay attention. We still have to have the breathing in the hollow body, so this takes place within that environment. So I'd like you to pay attention to the liver. And your liver, if you don't know where it is, it's on the right side under your ribs, mostly on the right side, but it actually goes up under the rib cage a little bit over to the left side. So we don't have to put a lot of energy into it, but just pay attention that as you breathe in, you're going to breathe in, and the color, we have a color, and the color is teal green. You know, that kind of blue-green color? Really pretty blue-green, like the color of the sea sometimes. So now we're going to focus the inhale. We breathe in this color of light into the area of the liver. And as we breathe in kindness. As we breathe out anger. And we're just going to do that for a little while. Without judging, any thoughts come up, just watch them. Just watch them disappear. Go back to where they came from. Or if that doesn't work, just suck them down to the bottom of the spine and let them go into the earth. And actually try to feel kindness when you breathe in kindness. And then we drop that one and we move over to the left side of the rib cage to the spleen in the stomach. And the color this time is the color of, what do you call them? Kaki? Persimmons? Kaki? Is that what you call them, those fruits? Kaki. The color of kaki. Kind of pinkish orange. And as we exhale, we let out worry. And as we inhale, we bring in just a sense of openness. It's kind of like, rather than worrying, being open to a different possibility, a different outcome. And just kind of think that to yourself when you're breathing in. Breathing in openness, acceptance, and letting go of worry and obsessive thoughts. And focus it on the left side of the rib cage. And we drop that. And then the next organ we concentrate on is the heart. And this is actually the heart, not the heart chakra. And the color is bright pink. That happy color, you know? So when we breathe in joy. And when we breathe out, we let go of hatred and aversion. And you don't have to think about it, just tell yourself that that's what's going on. And just feel your whole body, not just your heart, but your whole body. I forgot to say that. So your whole body is full of pink light. Each time, the whole body is full of that light. And that joy. And then next we have the lungs. And that color is sort of like silver, shining silver. So we fill the body with silver light as we breathe in. And we breathe in, as we exhale, we let go of grief. And when we breathe in dignity, which is an interesting combination. Thinking about dignity. It's kind of a sense of self-worth. And the last one, the color is dark blue, like royal blue. And we breathe into the kidneys, in the lower back, and we breathe in a sense of safety, and we let go of fear. And that's the last one. So then just to end the meditation now, we can just wish for all beings to be free of their suffering, emotional and physical and spiritual. And we can imagine from this hollow body the colors of lights of all the colors we've been visualizing, the green and the orange and the pink and the silver and the blue, all go out through rainbow lights as we exhale and go out and touch all those beings that we know that need healing, and just send it out all around the world. Just breathing in, breathing in health, all the health, and for yourself, filling up your whole body, and then when you exhale, sharing that with all sentient beings. I'm feeling happy. Thinking that just by doing this, I'm creating the cause to be able to help people in the future, just by wishing for it now. And just notice if your mind feels a little more peaceful than when you came in, a little more settled or balanced. If it doesn't, that's okay. We can just stop getting tired. So we can just end by dedicating whatever positive energy or healing energy and enlightening energy with it. Share it with all the beings throughout the universe. It's good not to sit too long. So how was that? Was that like a drag, or is that okay? Is that interesting? Maybe let's just take a minute, because we probably shouldn't go to. Maybe you could just break up in twos and just discuss it amongst yourselves, because people are always shy to talk out in class. But if you just turn to the person next to you and just talk about what it was like, without, it doesn't matter if it was, you could say, I didn't like that at all. That's fine too, But it just helps sometimes to share a little bit. So is that okay with you guys? Okay, so let's do that. You can stand up if you want. So, yeah. Just a few minutes, Yeah.
Successful
Yeah, but I think
Just one question because I
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
sure. You know, you talked about the liver. And what was the second organ that we did?
The spleen.
Spleen.
Spleen has a lot to do with when when we study and we think a lot. We don't in Chinese medicine that wears out your spleen. Believe it or not, and foods that are really good for that. Like if you have to think a lot at your job and everything, are things like orange foods, like sweet potatoes and carrots and probably the kakis and yeah. Of course, good foods for the liver are green things. This is just how it is. So yeah, I think tomorrow I won't have to talk at first. We'll just come in and do some exercises. If you come back tomorrow, I won't. But I had to do some kind of introduction tonight. But anyway, how was that? Was that helpful? I mean, was it interesting? I mean, because I tell you how I do that. I often do this lying down in bed at night. You don't have to sit up and be meditating, But especially if if things are a little bit rattled, it's and you don't even have to do it that long. But you probably wrote it down, or we have it recorded, or I can send it to you. Actually, I have a little graph of it. But yeah, because I just found it was for me a helpful, helpful.
Yeah.
So did anybody have anything interesting to say about it, or?
I kind of like that it's like, so we are very much used to the calm abiding, so concentrative kind of techniques, and then also the concept, like let's say the visualization and the analytical meditation.
Yeah.
And I feel like this kind of meditation takes you to yet another space in which you don't have, in which it helped me at least subside a little bit the conceptual mind.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it wasn't trying to squeeze and concentrate. It somehow relaxed me in a different way. I think that's hard for me to describe, but I very much like that, because I think it's kind of going away from the words, or trying to not have words, but more going into the emotional world, which is yet another sphere somehow. So it seems like it's not something we do on an everyday basis with the meditations that we practice.
I find it kind of opens my mind up to just experiencing the clarity of my mind, which is what we want to do, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, because there's just something about balance. Because if you think about it, that the organs are related to the emotions, and the emotions are what make our minds thinking all the time. But if you balance the organs and your emotions get balanced, then your mind's just going to naturally open up, right? Yeah. What about you, Jeff? How was it for you?
For me?
Yeah.
Token male.
I've done it with men before.
It was good. It was a little difficult for me to put my mind or the focus on to the specific organ.
Yeah.
So, but the color and just kind of the general association with kind of the hollow body was feasible.
Yeah, I think that was the mistake I made, because you don't really have to, focus your mind on the liver itself. You just have to feel your body being full of that beautiful green. I love that color, green color, and just know that that's going into your liver. That's kind of more how it is. You don't have to, because otherwise then you're thinking too much again. You just have to relax and feel your whole body full of that color and think, as I'm breathing in, my liver's feeling kindness, and then I'm breathing out, I'm letting go of anger, because that's where anger lives, is in your liver, and that's why alcoholics get angry. Why it's when your people get drunk, they often get angry, and so and I just find that in my mind it's easier to work with the body than the mind. The body doesn't talk back. You just, do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's kind of like, if you can, I think that's why I like the tantric approach, because if you work from both sides, then you have a better chance of coming to an equilibrium, open space where you can cultivate love and kindness. Yeah. How about my Aussie friend?
I don't know if I was doing it correctly, but what I was doing is I was breathing in the colour, and then I was really focusing on where the organs are. I think I roughly know where they are.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I was also trying to really experience the emotions, and then I discovered that actually 2 or 3 of the emotions were actually completely blocked. I couldn't feel them at all.
Yeah,
like
that's
when I tried
interesting.
to feel them, there was nothing there. There was literally nothing there.
Yeah.
But I still kept on going with the colour and all,
that's
bringing
good.
in and out and all that type of thing.
Yeah.
But,
that's exactly
it was kind
what
of very interesting because I thought, okay, it's very interesting because some emotions I can really feel the intensity of them actually.
Yeah.
It was like,
Yeah, well, just keep with it, because it's interesting. If you don't feel it, then just if you keep doing it, something might come up at some point in the future,
Yeah,
And
you can only hope, right?
Yeah, even if you just do it for 5 or 10 minutes, it's a worthwhile thing to do, Yeah. What else were you gonna say, Jeff? Sorry.
No, it's kind of like doing Tonglen with yourself.
Exactly.
Because we do a lot of Tonglen, but then I don't think I've ever done it with myself.
Well, you definitely should. We might do that. Actually, we probably will do that tomorrow. I think you have to start with yourself with someone. We'll do some of that tomorrow. But I'm thinking you all have to go to work, so we probably should stop at 8:30, don't you think? Isn't that when you usually stop?
No, we usually stop at 9.
That's true.
Is it?
Yeah, we do 7 to 9.
Yeah, okay, because
we can go upstairs and have a cup of coffee and sit around in a circle and talk. That's what we normally do.
Yeah, if you want to do that. What about anybody else? What's your name again?
I'm Teres.
That's right, Teres.
Yes, I also really like to work with the colors.
Yeah.
I think that's also something which is good which you can visualize and really also like feel and see.
Yeah. Yeah. So, did anybody just not like it at all? I mean, does anybody have aversion to this? Yeah. How about you? What did you think?
I liked it. I found it a bit difficult though to imagine the color. I think that worked, but imagining the color and then at the same time focusing on the what you breathe in and what you breathe out.
Yeah.
I kind of captured myself more either on focusing on the color or focusing on what I need to breathe in and breathe out.
Yeah.
So kind of combining was a bit difficult at the beginning, I think.
Yeah. Well, one of the things Lama Thubten taught about Tantra, he said, when you're visualizing things, you don't have to really make them there. You just have to believe it's happening. And I think that that's really helpful because a lot of times we put too much effort into it, And also to think, if it's not happening, just pretend it is, Because eventually it will, if you think it's a worthwhile thing, But I know all of you probably work pretty hard jobs, so I just thought that this is just a nice way to treat yourself when you come home from work or when you wake up in the morning or, just to keep yourself healthy and alive, mentally and physically. It's a very simple thing to do. So, and I think it's helpful to know the relationship between the feelings and the organs, So, so unless you want to do something else, we could stop and go upstairs and just hang out. Is that what you like to do? We can keep going upstairs and from away, or you can ask me questions about anything you want, really. So does that sound like a plan?
Sounds good.
Because I don't, we don't want to work too much because then it's you just get tired,
You were mentioning one thing I was a bit curious about is you mentioned that for certain organs you eat certain I don't know what we're saying. For example, liver you eat green vegetables and fruits and things. Yeah. What about for the other organs? Just out of curiosity, I'm just curious.
Yeah,
for
well,
lungs, for example, the
Chinese medicine, they often talk about meat, so I don't know how that works for vegetarian. But they say that lamb is really good for your heart. And but other than that, I don't really know. I know that the kidneys, kind of dark foods, like beans are really good for your kidneys, like black beans and all kinds of beans are good for kidneys, and they're probably good for the heart too. But also, what else is good for kidneys? I'm trying to remember besides beans. Oh, fish. They say fish. So, but if you're vegetarian, I mean, we eat beans anyway, But black beans are specifically good Do you eat black beans in this country?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, they get everything.
Yeah. With rice. So yeah.
Aren't there beans that are called kidney beans?
Yes.
Maybe they
Or it's a marketing trick.
The other.
True.
They're shaped like kidneys. But the other food in Chinese medicine that's really good for your kidneys is black sesame seeds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know there were black sesame.
Yeah. Yep. You can make gamasio out of them and stuff like that. I don't know how you get them here, but yeah, and it's funny because they say that when you're and there's a whole qigong that I usually teach to people. I don't know if we'll do that tomorrow or not, but it's specifically for kidney qi.
Oh, okay.
Because according to Chinese medicine, the more stress we have, the more our kidney qi gets lost. And that the kidney qi is what's responsible for the overall strength and health of the body. And so weak kidney qi leads to like old age, and people who have strong kidneys, kidney qi, not just kidneys, live longer and don't get gray hair and stuff like that. So it's kind of the most important qi to cultivate is kidney qi. Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Oh, it's interesting that's an important organ because I would have thought other organs in the body are more important than the kidneys. For example, the heart.
Yeah, well, the heart is important, but the heart and the kidneys, I think in Chinese medicine, if the kidneys are weak, then the heart gets weak.
Oh, okay.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Connection.
Yeah, there is, and also the brain, so, yeah. That's why, even in our culture we say fish is brain food. Do you ever hear that? Fish is good food? I've heard that. Yeah. So anyway, well, let's just dedicate and go upstairs and tomorrow we'll just start with some exercises because there's another discussion I want to have and a little meditation I want to do, and we'll end with doing Tonlin for yourself. And if we don't get that far, I just really want to encourage you to, if you know what I'm talking about by Tonlin, to do it for yourself, because there's nothing. It's a really great way to heal. And a lot of I know I first saw Rinpoche used to talk about that.
What is it actually?
Tonlin.
Mm-hmm.
It's a breathing meditation where we'll do it. We'll try to do it tomorrow. See if I can get that far. Where you imagine that at your heart is your Buddha nature. You're all like your because in Buddhism we believe that we're born with this natural basic goodness, and that because of delusion and karma that exists in us all the time and from life to life to life, but because of delusion and karma that gets covered up. This is sort of basic Buddhist philosophy. So I was telling the people in Martigny last weekend that instead of being born with original sin, in Buddhism we were born with original goodness. And we forget it. And so the whole point of Buddhism is to clean up all the tarnishment that's around it, so that our true Buddha nature will shine forth. And that's really all it's about, is purifying the wrong concepts we have about ourselves. Because we actually have a little Buddha inside, And so you imagine that little Buddha nature is inside yourself, at the center of your heart. And it's like shiny. It's a shining bright light of healing, light energy. And so the way that Tonlin practice. So first you do a settling meditation, like what we just did, could help you to get settled, and then you focus on that light at your heart. We kind of did a little bit at the end when you shine that out. When I said shine it out to all beings. And so the way it works is you're sitting there with that hollow body that's full of light, and you focus on your heart. And what you do is you imagine, if you're working with yourself first, that I like to tell people to think about all the kind of negative stories and concepts you have about yourself. And as you breathe in, you imagine that from all the parts of your body, you're breathing in those negative concepts, and they get brought in the form of like black smoke or tar. And when it hits this little diamond light of, your precious Buddha nature that you see in little children, little children, it just shines out, the little Buddha, you see little 2-year-olds, they're unabashedly good. And, they can be little devils sometimes, but there's this little goodness about them, that they're not quite as inhibited as we are. And so you imagine that you breathe that in, and then when it touches that space in your heart, it's completely obliterated. And as you're breathing out, you're giving yourself all the love and goodness that you deserve and that is your birthright. And so you just do that. You just sit and do that over and over and over again. And it's a very nice meditation to do. And what happens is, and what I'd like to work with tomorrow is if you can first create that safe space where the Tonglen is taking place, then how it becomes a healing practice is that the more, when you start out, you create this safe space, which in what Buddhism we call refuge. You create an inner refuge, which that's what I'm planning to do, give some exercises of that tomorrow. Then within that inner refuge, you have this safe place where you can let those concepts that no longer serve you, those thoughts you have that just get in the way, you can just suck them in and imagine that they're going away. And it works. And I spend a lot of time in my retreats doing that kind of work with myself, because I realized that one of the things I realized, because I know you're really interested in shamatha meditation, getting good concentration. But one of the things I found is that if you're just sitting there meditating with yourself, and what happened to me after the first year or so of one of the long retreats I did, I started to notice that when I just sat with myself, I felt this like shame about who I was. And there was absolutely no reason for me to feel that way, because I was a good student, I was popular, I didn't think I had low self-esteem issues, because I'd always been pretty good at what I did, But when I kind of took away all the, everything else, there's just this sort of basic feeling about myself that was very subtle. It didn't really have words. And it wasn't basic goodness, it was like basic badness, And I really had to work with that in order to be able to find a calm, stable place, that refuge place. And so I recommend to people, if they're interested in doing Shine, to do this Tonglen with yourself. Because what it feels like is that the mind isn't going to want to be still and quiet if, when you reach that place, it's uncomfortable, that you start knocking up against your concepts of why aren't you like this, or just this sort of, maybe not everybody has that, but I think a lot of us do. And so it's really important to begin to just melt that away with non-conceptual self-acceptance and love for who you are, just as you are. And it's something that we have to cultivate. And the beauty about it is that when you begin to cultivate a non-judgmental acceptance about who you are, no matter what you are, and no matter how bad you've been, then that judgmental tendency of how we're always judging other people, it's not there anymore. So I think for people who really want to be good meditators, it's important to do this Tonglen with yourself. And just play with the concept of it and see where it goes, And because then once you do it with yourself, you can do it with other people too. And a lot of people, when we talk about it, they're like, I can't do it with myself, you know. That's self-cherishing, and we misunderstand a lot the concept of self-cherishing. Self-cherishing is when you are being selfish, but it doesn't mean you don't cherish yourself. You know, we have to, if you're really serious about, you know, going to Tibet and doing all these amazing, you have to cherish yourself, you know, because you care about yourself enough that you want to get enlightened. You want to be able to benefit sentient beings, and you can't do it if you don't have a healthy sense of who we are. And Lama Yeshe used to say all the time, he would say, you need a healthy ego to practice Dharma, you know. He would say, you need to grow yourself, dear, you know. Because what happens is the reason we get all selfish and, you know, over-aggrandized and full of ourselves is because we don't have a healthy ego, you know. There's somewhere inside of you where you don't feel good about yourself, so you have to make up for it by, you know, showing off and showing that you can make $10 billion a year and whatever, you know. You know what I'm saying, right? So to unlearn for yourself is really a really good thing. So try it. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, now let's dedicate. Maybe we'll try it tomorrow. So we dedicate. Oh, well, here's our little Therese. You're good at dedicating. Yeah.
Let's dedicate all the good energy we created tonight for us, that we love and we learn how to generate this healthy ego, that we can be of best benefit first for ourselves to heal, and then for all others to free them from all the suffering. And maybe you can also think of all the people who are sick and have mental problems. May they find a way out and grow and heal.
And for the long lives of our gurus.
Yes.
And for the Dharma to flourish. And for this little center to flourish and grow and continue to have harmony and friendship and love. And yeah. So. Okay. So now we go upstairs, I guess.
Yeah.
And thank you, you know, for the opportunity